Hello and welcome back to the Leinster Listen. I'm your host Mick Linan, and this is episode 55, the review of Leinster vs DHL Stormers in the URC semi-final. This episode's content today will be the URC Championship match results, the overall opinion of the game, the analysis of the game events, and then URC positioning after this weekend. Alright folks, we are here once again. We are in the final, and that is because we overcame the DHL Stormers in the semi-final, and what a crazy game it was. Just going through those results there, if you don't know them already, obviously Leinster have won 20 points to 11 to the Stormers, and Glasgow Warriors have lost, crashed out, might I say, to the Bulls 21-22. So yeah, I mean, let's just go through quickly on those two games, kind of an overview. And I'll start with Glasgow Warriors. Obviously, we'll go deeper into the Leinster game. But the Glasgow Warriors versus Vodacom Bulls game was absolutely sensational. The first half, you would have imagined that the Bulls were on their way out. They looked defeated. They looked so tired. Their walk into the dugout at halftime was just abysmal. They looked like they were just completely gone. And that was the end of them. And it was in Murrayfield, obviously, so the crowd was going crazy for Glasgow Warriors. But then they came out the traps like a dog that has been injected with the most steroids that you could possibly have given it. And they actually did the unimaginable there by not allowing Glasgow Warriors to score even a single point in that 40 minutes. So they came back hugely there to nip them in the bud by 1 point. Now, I will say Pollard did miss an awful lot of penalties there, so they should have really beaten them by a lot more. But what an absolute crazy game. I think at halftime I was saying, right, well, here we go, we're going to have to try and figure out where potentially Leinster might play. If they have won, obviously there's that talk about Murrayfield being not available, but their home grounds not being available, and they might have to go over to the Aviva Stadium. And you know what? It has just been crazy because that thing has just been blown out of the water. There was no more discussion about that. They don't need to care about that because they're gone. They are out of the URC Championship, and they were so cocky going into it. Look, no offence to any of the Glasgow Warriors fans here who might be listening, but that was exactly what I had called. I had called it in the preview episode that the Bulls were going to come over and just disrupt exactly what the Glasgow Warriors were going to do. I thought if the Bulls had any sense, they'd be looking at that Connacht game and really diving deep into where Connacht showed the vulnerabilities the Glasgow Warriors had. And they did it. They came out in the second half and they just knew what they had to do, and they did it. And fair play for them to get into a semi-final to begin with, but get into a final once again with it's just pure grit and determination coming out of that. And look, it is a bit sad for us. We don't get another chance to take a crack at the Glasgow Warriors, and it would have been a very poetic end if we had gotten to the final against Glasgow Warriors and we'd beaten them, and it would have been fantastic if Sam Prendergast could have rubbed the head there of a few players, if you catch my drift on that. But yeah, look, crazy. I can't believe it. Every time I look at that, the stats on that game, I'm just dumbfounded. The fact that they were able to keep Glasgow Warriors on a 0 score in that second half was just crazy. And I'm delighted. I'm delighted because I wanted the Bulls to win first off, but I wanted us to play the Bulls again, to have a repeat for the final. And it's even more of a repeat because it's going to be in Croke Park again. So, just crazy. And that is the URC to a T, folks. The whole time in this championship, it has been to the wire. Edge of your seat stuff. The table looked crazy coming into the final round, as you know. There was chopping and changes there on who was positioning where. The quarterfinals were crazy as well. So, yeah, look, I mean, as a rugby fan, you have to admit that this has just been one of the most exciting URC, I suppose, knockout rounds that we've ever had. And the whole league itself has just been fantastic. Leinster being so wishy-washy there at the start of the season, slowly building up they're way up that table again in that kind of pure grit, determination, and what I would call ugly wins the whole way through, but wins nonetheless. And here we are in another final in Croker once again. It's just poetry in motion, folks. But I suppose let's go over to Leinster versus DHL Stormers. And look, thank God I'm not a betting man again, because I said Leinster were going to beat them 34-17, and obviously, as you know, that was not the case. It was 20-11, and let me say the scoreboard there kind of reflects something different, a 9-point win over them, but it was definitely not that. The whole game was just grueling. It was grueling. It was so tense, and look, not the free scoring Aviva night that bookies had either. So obviously, I'm not a betting man, but clearly they're not either, because they had 1-10 win there. 1-10 odds on us outright, and then also a 10-11 on -14 handicap, which they also didn't get. So look, we were very clinical very early. I think that's generally what we do. We get out of the traps very quickly. We make use of that kind of blitz play. It's been very good for us, I suppose, in that sense. But then that middle piece, I say middle, but it's probably about 50 to 60 minutes where it's just touch and go for us. Not fantastic, and something we definitely have to look into the next season coming up, because we can't have that happen again, especially with the Europeans Championship as well, which again, I don't want to go into too much about it, but it is something crazy. And I suppose, look, we did benefit there as well by a red card there for Ackermann, who, in fairness, Dobie had come out in his post-release there and apologised to Leo Cullen about it, because there's no place in rugby for what he did there, tucking the arm and driving the shoulder into a man's head. Not on. Don't agree with it. Get it off rugby. We've had enough problems there throughout the entire rugby history with head injuries, so there's no place in rugby for that. But obviously, as I said, we definitely benefit from that. Then there was also that yellow for Salmaan Moerat, who, like, there's a lot of people saying that he shouldn't have got a yellow for it, because there's no such thing as cynical play by lifting your legs, but you're lifting your legs in the ruck. You're going to get a yellow for it. Any sort of TMO, any sort of referee is going to call that. But then, Jamison Gibson-Park then came through, settled it with his lovely try, and it was just brilliant. It's what we wanted to see. It took DHL Stormers going to 13 men probably for us to get to it. But yeah, I suppose going into the overall opinion there, it was scrappy. It was scrappy. As I said, it was very tense. A very Leinster win, really, but good enough when it had to be. But, we need to do better than that, especially going into this final. You've seen what the Bulls can do, pulling that back from the second half. A second half rally is not what we want for a team to do. So, I suppose if we scored 3 points on the penalty, we're doing better than Glasgow. But I don't want to put them into the ground too much there. But again, it's just one of those crazy things. Going over to the scrums there, largely unstable there, unfortunately, with Porter on. The second he left, Thomas Clarkson there in the front row just held up under pressure, and Stormers really did push back after the break as well. But nothing too catastrophic there. I think at set piece we did a fairly decent job. Losing Porter probably actually benefited us. And I don't want to dog Porter into the ground here, but as always, the referees are watching his elbow. They're watching him peek up and push down. So we were getting pinged for that left, right and centre. And, him being one of our scrum anchors, that's not fantastic. But look, anyway, he went off and the scrums slightly improved there. So, yeah, something we're going to have to look at going into this final. Lineouts were mixed as well. Probably functional rather than dominant there, I'd probably call that. We got enough for primary ball there, Prendergast in the game, obviously, for that. But, we really have to hone down on that, because the Bulls' lineouts were fantastic against Glasgow Warriors. And look, I mean, you have to say, I suppose, going from the Lions in the quarterfinal probably didn't test us enough there in the lineouts. They had just an absolute abysmal day back in the quarterfinal for that. So I don't like saying that we weren't being tested. Obviously, the whole league, the whole tournament, we were being tested for them. So we just need to get back on that, and probably didn't benefit there by Dan Sheehan not being on the pitch. His throwing game was just fantastic, and his sync play in those lineouts are just great. So I think Kelleher did his job. Maybe a little bit mixed. I think we just need to be more dominant with those lineouts, and I think we opted for the maul there a few times, and we went nowhere, mainly because the Bulls pack is just massive. So, sorry, not the Bulls, the DHL Stormers package is massive. So probably something we have to look at as well. But yeah, I suppose probably a faux pas there. The Bulls pack is also massive, so maybe the maul line out is just not the approach we go there. Maybe just throw it off fast and try bring it out to those the back rows and the wingers as quickly as you can. Going over to defence, look, gritty is probably the only way I could say it. We had an awful spell there at after half time because DHL Stormers just ran riot in our defence play there. Jory Mathay's boot kept them in it non-stop. 50-22s. Evan Roos there tested us around the fringes as well. I don't think we cracked when we mattered it, and that mattered for it, I suppose. And when it matters most, you do want that defence to really turn up. And as I said, probably throughout the league, an awful lot there. It's just we have a plan A. Well, Jack Nienaber obviously has a plan A. He just doesn't have a plan B then when it doesn't go right. I think we just try to bash through that plan A and try to get it back. It just doesn't work. I think we've been honed in on by pretty much every other team. They're watching our defence play. They know the way we do it. So something about that has to fix. We're not going to be able to do that in the final. The Bulls are going to want to come out and take that silverware away from us. They got smashed in the final last time out. They're not going to want that again. And yeah, look, obviously there's some things you can't be defensive against. The Ackermann dangerous challenge there, Ronan Kelleher, was just crazy. And that was something that our defence could have really struggled with if we had a player go off because of a HIA, considering Porter, all them players are gone already. But look, I think focus on defence. I think a lot of people try to say, your attack is the best defence. I don't agree with that. You need defensive plays. So Nienaber needs to buck up here for the final, prove himself, prove the media wrong. Obviously had the outburst there as well, which, fair enough to him. He's only human. There's only so much you can take, but you have to put pen down on paper when it matters there. So we need a plan B, and especially for the final. And it's perfect timing. Who cares if we spend the whole tournament there kind of on the back foot in terms of defence? Make it matter for the final, lads. No one cares. No one cares about that you lost to Glasgow Warriors. No one cares about that Benetton tore us asunder there in a couple of the games there with their attack play. That's all forgotten about. That is all forgotten about. There's no more points here. We're just looking towards the final, and that's what we want to do. So Nienaber, I would like him to come out with obviously the coach and staff there and just have a plan B. Just have something that we can fall back on, even if it's just don't move up on the line and let them soak the tackles and try force a jackal or something. That's all. If that's what you have to do, let it so be it. Moving over there to the attack, pretty much stop-start, I suppose. Very strong first quarter, as I said. Probably a very strong last quarter, but obviously benefiting there from DHL Stormers only having 13 men on the pitch. But let me just say, Rieko Ioane's early try there was just bliss. Bliss. And, I think he's probably one of the people there that has just shown coming into the last few knockout rounds here. He's played his centre position absolutely fantastic now in the last 3 games. So I have to hand it to him there. He did a very good run there with a dummy out to the left who he could have passed it, but he just broke the ankles of the 2 last defenders there to get his open try. So that fluid play there, that we're out to the wings with huge gaps in between the second last man and the last man to really stretch that defence. Brilliant. That's what you want to see. Very opportunistic obviously as well, but Moerat there was just fantastic. We're doing this a lot of kick tennis there, and I'm pretty sure DHL Stormers had 2 men back at all times. Probably didn't benefit them now in their attack structure. I think they were probably panicking a bit, knowing that Gibson-Park has such a good boot in that ruck. And Sam Prendergast had probably the game of his career there against Lions, which was mostly about those kicks as well. But yeah, overall, probably not pretty. Mostly effective for what we had in the attack structure, but we need to obviously hone that in again. And maybe Dan Sheehan again is he's an integral part of our attack structure. Having him out in the wing for some reason always seems to generate a try. So missed him very sorely there, and hopefully he's back for the final. That would just be icing on the cake there for us. Moving over there to notable players, look, I mentioned them already. Jamison Gibson-Park, obviously man of the match for every reason that he deserves it. I'd say he's probably picked for most man of the matches this season for Leinster. He's never had a bad game really. Most of the times he's playing and he's been subbed off for Luke McGrath or maybe Frawley in some situations. But I tell you one thing, he's just so clinical. This season has been probably one of the best features for him. He's lovely to watch with his quick ruck play, the passes, the looping passes that he can do, the long passes where he's skipping 2 men. it's dangerous play, but it pays off, and he's the man for that. He's the king for those very good passes out to the opposite man that he would have, I suppose, in that sense. And his contribution was just massive. So huge shout out there for Jamison Gibson-Park. Just one of the best that we have. Sam obviously has to get a notable mention here as well. Directed pretty much the entire early onslaught there that we got. He obviously he converted 2 penalties as well, and his conversion as well. So he has some fairly good game coming in there. Probably got the confidence up against Lions as well. There's something to be said about having a very good game and then building upon it. And I think his confidence was a bit knocked there during the European cycle. A bit knocked there when Harry Byrne was getting played first. This time we obviously had Harry Byrne on the bench. That in itself is probably stress enough to get you to go and retain exactly what you deserve. So good old game from Sam there. I think he's building upon it. Next season he gets locked into that gym there and just starts pumping iron. I think he'll come out in his Johnny Sexton era now. So very good game for him. I think he probably will get started in the 15 there against the Bulls now in Croker. Rieko Ioane is the next man up here. The opening try there really had a dominant game, very dominant carries as well. Now I will say a couple of times where his ankles were broken by the attacking structure that the DHL Stormers had, but for a centre now he did his job. His rate was very good, the physicality was very strong, and it's kind of what you want in that centre position. Probably he's been underutilised out in the wing, but James Lowe had a very good game as well, so you can't really fault him there. And I think he's been played, and I've mentioned a few times online, I think he's been played in this floating winger position, because every time you see him, he's very far out left, or whatever, on the fringe of the play, which is kind of, it can be dangerous because you're opening up a gap there for an intercept pass that he mightn't be covering the players correctly, but it obviously is working out for us, considering he had that opening try, and a very strong try for him as well. Last but not least there, Ruan Ackermann, massive in the loose play and the breakdown as well. Very good. Obviously he was on the receiving end of that Ackermann dangerous challenge, and sorry, I have mentioned that again, but it was definitely the game defining card, and I hope he's okay after that, because those kind of challenges really do have knock-on effects. So I'd be interested to see the injury list. He might be held off for HIA protocols, which is very fair. I think players' health is the most important thing about these games. I don't care about getting another trophy as long as he's okay and that our doctors are looking after him, and they obviously will. But in terms of his play, it was just fantastic. As I said, maybe a little bit better in the lineouts. I think he struggled a little bit probably throughout the season for that. He's been kind of wishy-washy a little bit about that, a bit of hot and cold 50-50, something that Dan Sheehan definitely doesn't have. So yeah, but regardless, he stood up, he stepped up to the mark, and he did his good job there. So fair play to Ronan Kelleher as well. Referee there was obviously Holly Davison, and she kept her perfect record in the Aviva for us, and obviously in Dublin. 4th time at the Aviva, actually, mind you, 29th URC game overall, and I think she actually had a fairly decent game. I seen a lot of Bach accounts there saying that she killed the DHL Stormers attack, that the yellow card that for I actually can't remember his name now, but that yellow card from the feet up in the ruck shouldn't have been a yellow card. I think if you actually watched rugby for what it was and you weren't inherently biased, and that is, I know, very ironic coming from a Leinster Listen podcast, but if you look at it purely from a rules point of view, she did what she had to do. The TMO was obviously looking at it as well. You can't have a situation where you don't call that a yellow for a cynical play, which was a part of our attacking structure. We were looking very dominant there, and some people might call it the dark arts. Yeah, dark arts is going to happen, and the box are the main contributor to the dark arts. But this time it got seen through. The light was shone upon it, and it was given a yellow card and rightly so. If it was the other way around and it wasn't a yellow card, the DHL Stormers fans would be going crazy. So she had her hands full. I think she did a good job. She let the game flow at parts. She relied on the TMO exactly when she needed it, and I think she had a fairly decent game. So fair play to Holly there, and I think she might. It'd be funny now to see if she gets a position there on the pitch for the final. it would be very good, I think, if she did get it. Her 30th URC game overall as well, and she deserves it. She's a very good referee. And then there was also that ill-tempered contest there. I say ill-tempered, but there was actually a scuffle going into half-time, and it was obviously handbags, so it wasn't any punch or anything, but tempers were up. The heat was getting up, and there was a very funny clip there, if you seen it, where Big Joe rubbed the head of one of the players just to really taunt him as well. But you kind of like to see that. You want to see a bit of energy, a bit of bloodlust coming through there. There's no harm having a bit of a scrap going into the half-time, rattle the cages there a bit and have a better exciting game. And they actually, both teams came out at half-time probably having that in their blood. And it was a great game. I actually thought it was a very good game. I think the ill discipline from DHL Stormers really killed them. Obviously going on to 13 men in the last 10 minutes, that was game over. You just knew we were ahead anyway at that point, but you just knew that was it. It was game over for them. Their ill discipline really pretty much, sorry, pardon my French here, but fucked them. So that's it. That's what you get at DHL Stormers. You have to be very disciplined. You don't do shit like that in a semi-final that you want to win and get into a final. They had the opportunity there to have a final in Cape Town, and they just let it slip through their fingers. So yeah, anyway, I'm happy. I'd say you're happy as well if you're listening to this. I suppose in the line there, look, we ground out a very messy, a very ugly win. 2011, fine, I'll take it. A semi-final win. We rode the Stormers in discipline into the very end, and we're back in the grand final. And in Croker nonetheless. Alright folks, very quickly here, go through these match events. So 8th minute there, you had a try for Leinster. Rieko Ioane, very fantastic, just a fantastic try. It was just well structured. The attacking structure was so good. Prendergast converted that from very out wide, and that brought to score Leinster 7, DHL Stormers 0. In the 12th minute then we had a penalty for us. Sam Prendergast put that over, and we had Leinster 10, DHL Stormers 0. 18th minute then, we had another penalty for Leinster. Sam Prendergast was pinpoint accurate, but in fairness, he was right in front of the post, so if you missed that, I'd be complaining non-stop in this episode. Score after that was Leinster 13, DHL Stormers 0. 28th minute then, you had a try for DHL Stormers, and that was by Adré Smith. He crashed over from close range there after Porter's injury, and Mathé hit the post with that and brought the score to Leinster 13, DHL Stormers 5. 35th minute then, a penalty for DHL Stormers, and Jamison Mathé put that over very cleanly. A very good kick by him. Brought the score to Leinster 13, DHL Stormers 8, and that was the half-time score. So very close going into the half-time. You can see where tensions were high, and lads were wanting a bit of a fight going in there. 45th minute then, into the second half, another penalty for DHL Stormers, and Jamison Mathé put that over very cleanly there. Brought to score Leinster 13, DHL Stormers 11. So only 2 points ahead there. And then you had the big events. So you had the 58th minute was a yellow card for Ruan Ackermann for that tucked arm shoulder into Ronan Kelleher's head, which obviously was then upgraded to a red on review. So they were pretty much out of a player there into pretty much the last leg of the game. I think they were able to bring on a player in the 17, halfway through the 79th minute. So pretty much 14 minutes at that point. Then you had the 62 minute try there for Leinster by Jamison Gibson-Park, and he regathered that after Moerat kicked the ball out of his hands at a ruck, and it was scored under the post there. Obviously successfully converted then by Harry Byrne. Brought to score Leinster 20, DHL Stormers 11. And then the last event of that game was a yellow card in the 65th minute for DHL Stormers, and that was Salmaan Moerat, who pretty much did a very cynical play there by lifting his legs in the ruck to try and disrupt that ruck play, and he did. So he got caught for that. Last event pretty much set in stone what was happening there, and that was game over for them. So the full-time score there was Leinster 20, DHL Stormers 11. Man of the match there was Jamison Gibson-Park, and he deserved every bit of it. He set the tempo from the very beginning of the first half to the very end of the game. A huge balance there for him. Obviously scored a try that pretty much ended the Stormers fight back, and biggest stage ever to get a man of the match so far. So I'm looking forward to the final for him. I think he's going to get it again. Alright folks, obviously the next game, as I talk about, you all know what it is. It's Leinster versus Vodacom Bulls in the grand final of the BKT United Rugby Championship. The date there is actually Friday, 19th of June at 7:30, so you might have known that the date for the final had always been picked as the Saturday 20th of June. But Metallica are playing, and that trumps everything. So we are moving it back to Friday, and it's not going to be Aviva, it's Croke Park once again. So an exact repeat of last year's final. And the only thing I hope it's not a repeat is of the rain that happened last year. My God, we were actually we were standing in Hill 16 with a load of rain ponchos on, load of the lads there just to show force for the Leinster crowd, and it wasn't a complete washout. Washout wasn't even, I'm not even exaggerating, the rain that fell was something chronic, but it definitely didn't dampen the spirits, and we came out and won, obviously, the URC there. So tickets are on sale from Wednesday, I believe. More information will come out on Tuesday. That will be a URC ticketed event, so I don't believe the season ticket holders will get early access. I think it'll just go information on Tuesday and then on sale on the Wednesday. So if you can get those tickets, lads, it's going to be an absolute cracker in Croker. As always, it's a fantastic place to have a rugby game, probably a final. We won't talk about the other Croke Park game that happened this year. That's dead and buried, as I said. We don't look back, we only look forward. But yeah, anyway, as you know, if you can get tickets, do. It'll be a great game. Obviously, any final is a fantastic thing to attend, but I'd love to see Croker filled with blue there. And it's not Dublin fans. But they haven't been showing force now for too much at all either, apart from their turncoats over to the hurling now currently, because they've been doing so bad in the football. But yeah, can't wait for it. It's going to be electric. Friday 19th of June, 7:30. I can't wait. Alright folks, that's her fairly short episode again today, but you don't want to hear me talking. You're probably out still celebrating the win and us getting into the final. If you haven't already, do please follow us on social media. Instagram probably mostly. If you're on YouTube, please do subscribe so I can get you the content you want whenever you want it. And look, hope to see you at the game on Friday, and as always, thanks for listening.